When someone raises their voice at you, talks down to you, or dismisses your presence like you don't even matter, it is not just rude, it's an attack on your value. And the more you ignore it, the more power you give away. It begins subtly, a sharp tone here, a condescending smirk there, and before you know it, you're questioning your worth, walking on eggshells, and shrinking your voice just to avoid conflict. Never born to tiptoe around someone else's comfort. You were not put on this earth to accept crumbs of respect while giving everything in return. The moment someone talks to you like you're beneath them is the moment you must remember who you are. Because a tone they use isn't accidental. It's revealing what they really think about you. It's showing you the level they place you on. And if that level is anything less than eye to eye, they don't deserve your presence. Some people hide their disrespect behind jokes, sarcasm, or just being real. But realness without respect is cruelty. There's a difference between honesty and humiliation. There's a difference between teasing and tearing down. And the people who consistently cross that line and then say you're being too sensitive, those are the ones who fear your boundaries the most. Because the moment you push back, the moment you demand more, their control begins to shake. They don't want a relationship. They want compliance. They want you to accept the tone, the attitude, the energy, no matter how damaging it is, because it benefits them. And once you allow someone to repeatedly treat you like that, you train them to believe they can. But respect is not something you beg for. It's something you command by what you tolerate, what you speak up against, and what you're willing to walk away from. Doesn't matter who it is, family, friends, co-workers, a partner. No one gets a pass to devalue you. The blood relation, the time you've spent together, the memories you've shared, none of that gives someone the right to mistreat you. Emotional history should never be an excuse for emotional damage. And sometimes the people closest to you are the very ones who chipped away at your spirit the most. They know your weaknesses. They know your past. And instead of lifting you up, they use it as ammunition. The problem is you keep forgiving out of loyalty, hoping they'll change, hoping the next conversation will be different. But every time they cross the line and you stay silent, you send a signal that says this is okay, and it's not okay. Being close to someone doesn't mean sacrificing your self-worth. There's also a form of disrespect that's quiet, but even more dangerous. The kind where they don't acknowledge your ideas, your presence, your efforts. They act like your voice doesn't carry weight, like your contributions don't matter. You show up, you give, you care, but you become invisible. That kind of disrespect eats at your confidence. It makes you question your intelligence, your value, your purpose. And over time, it breaks something inside you because being unseen is one of the most painful forms of being mistreated. You deserve to be in rooms where your voice is heard, your thoughts are respected, and your presence is valued, not tolerated. You weren't created to be silent in spaces you were built to influence. Disrespect is not always about what's said, it's also about what's ignored. When someone fails to acknowledge your boundaries, your time, your priorities, that is also disrespect. When they cancel on you last minute, interrupt you constantly, or act like their world matters more than yours, that's them telling you exactly where you stand in their life. And the more you excuse it, the more it becomes a habit. People notice what you correct. People notice what you accept. If you don't speak up, they assume it's acceptable. If you stay, they believe they're entitled to treat you like that forever. But the truth is, your silence becomes permission. Your tolerance becomes encouragement. If someone constantly steps over the line, it's not because they don't see it, it's because they know you won't enforce it. And let's not forget the disrespect that shows up as comparison, the kind that minimizes your growth by constantly stacking you against someone else. Why can't you be more like them? You're still doing that? That's all you've accomplished? These aren't questions. They're attacks disguised as concern. These are ways to make you feel inadequate while pretending it's for your benefit. That's not motivation. That's manipulation. You are not in a race against anyone. Your journey is your own. Your timeline is sacred. And anyone who can't respect where you are while cheering for where you're going doesn't deserve front row access to your life. You are not responsible for shrinking to fit into someone else's narrow vision of who you should be. You are responsible for protecting your peace, your purpose, and your power, no matter who it offends. ChatGPT said, they don't always come with fangs and venom. Sometimes they come smiling, pretending to care, using soft words to hide hard intentions. That's what makes manipulation so dangerous. It doesn't start with cruelty, it starts with confusion. They twist your words, then act surprised when you're upset. They shift the blame, then offer sympathy, just enough to keep you from walking away. They don't scream, they whisper doubts into your ear, slowly making you question your instincts, your memories, your very reality. You'll find yourself apologizing for things you didn't do, feeling guilty for speaking your truth, and defending yourself in situations where you did nothing wrong. And it's not because you're wrong. It's because someone designed it that way. They don't want resolution. They want control. They don't seek understanding. They seek domination through deceit. And every time you question yourself instead of them, they win a little more. Manipulation hides in patterns. It's not the occasional disagreement or mistake. It's a calculated cycle. First, they praise you, lift you up, make you feel special, irreplaceable. Then the shift begins. They withdraw affection. They weaponize silence. They react with anger when you don't comply. Suddenly, your peace is held hostage by their mood. You start negotiating with yourself, choosing silence over confrontation, tiptoeing around their triggers just to avoid conflict. You think you're keeping the peace, but you're just giving up your power. And then when you finally speak up, they flip the script. They act wounded. They accuse you of being too sensitive, too emotional, too selfish. That's the trap, making you believe you're the villain for defending yourself, making you doubt your right to be hurt. So you back down again until your voice fades and theirs becomes law in the world they built around you. There's a sinister brilliance to emotional manipulation. It's not loud, it's strategic. It preys on your empathy, your loyalty, your desire to see the good in people. They know how to cry on cue, how to spin stories that make them the victim, even when they're the one doing the damage. They know exactly how to say, I didn't mean it like that. You're overreacting. I was just trying to help. But those phrases are not apologies. They're tools to redirect the blame, to erase accountability, to make you second guess the pain they cause. And the longer you stay in that fog, the more you begin to think the problem is you. That's how manipulation works. It doesn't just control your actions, it rewires your self-worth. And the most terrifying part, you'll still care about them while they're breaking you. You start to feel crazy, like you're making things up. Like maybe you are too dramatic, too emotional, too needy. And that's not by accident. That's the result of someone deliberately distorting your emotional compass. They pick and choose when to show up for you. They act differently in public than they do in private. They give you just enough kindness to make you question the damage, just enough attention to keep you tethered. So you stay. You stay because you remember the good moments. You stay because you believe they can change. You stay because you've been conditioned to feel like leaving is wrong, like fighting for yourself is betrayal. But the truth is, manipulation thrives on your silence. It feeds on your hesitation. And the moment you stop believing your own voice is the moment you surrender to theirs. They're not confused. They're not broken. They're not doing the best they can. They are making choices. Calculated choices to manipulate your emotions, control your responses, and dominate the relationship. You'll notice how they never apologize unless they're backed into a corner. How they promise change only to repeat the same patterns a week later. How they use your kindness against you. They're not sorry. They're scared of losing access to your forgiveness. They don't fear losing you. They fear losing their grip on you. That's why the moment you set a boundary, they call you cold. The moment you go silent, they say you're being unfair because their world only works when you're constantly bending. And the second you stop bending, they panic. Not because they miss you, but because they can no longer use you. This isn't about one argument or misunderstanding. It's about a long, deliberate erosion of your self-trust. Manipulators don't want equal relationships. They want dominance disguised as love. They want you emotionally off balance so they can stay emotionally superior. They don't want you confident, clear, and grounded. They want you dependent, uncertain, and small. That's the game. And the only way to break it is to see it clearly. To understand that the pain you feel is not a failure on your part. It's a result of being emotionally hijacked by someone who never had your best interest at heart. When someone twists love into leverage, care into control, and vulnerability into a weapon, that's not love. That's a war you didn't ask for. And the longer you fight for their approval, the more you lose yourself. ChatGPT said, a lie may only take seconds to say, but the damage it leaves behind lasts far longer than the words spoken. It doesn't matter how big or small the lie is. What matters is that someone made the conscious decision to choose deception over honesty. They looked you in the eye, knowing they were twisting the truth, and they did it anyway. And in that moment, they didn't just lie to you. They chose themselves over the relationship. They chose comfort over courage, control over connection. Because lying isn't just about hiding something. It's about shaping the world in their favor while dismantling yours. And once you realize that someone has lied to you, it's like the floor beneath you shifts. You start to question everything, every conversation, every moment, every promise, not just the one lie, but all the moments surrounding it. And suddenly what was once solid becomes fragile, because if they could lie about one thing, what else are they capable of hiding? What people fail to understand is that lying isn't a mistake, it's a decision, a premeditated one. It takes effort to conceal the truth. It takes planning to fabricate details. It takes selfishness to withhold honesty and replace it with fiction. And when someone chooses to lie, they're not just covering something up. They're rewriting reality in a way that protects their image but leaves your trust shattered. The lie may make them feel safe in a moment, but it leaves the other person drowning in confusion, betrayal, and emotional chaos. Trust isn't something you can rebuild with a quick apology. It's not something you can earn back by simply saying, I didn't mean to, because you did mean to. You meant to avoid the consequences. You meant to manipulate the outcome. And now that the truth is out, you want to skip past the fallout. But trust doesn't work like that. It doesn't heal on your timeline. It heals, if it ever does, on the terms of the one who was hurt. The scariest part about being lied to is that it makes you question your intuition. You begin to doubt yourself. You look back and ask, how did I miss the signs? How could I have been so blind? And that self-blame is almost as painful as the betrayal itself. Because being lied to isn't just about being deceived by someone else. It's about the internal war that starts afterward. You begin to distrust your own judgment. You begin to look at everyone with suspicion. And the next time someone tells you they love you or care about you or that you can trust them, you hesitate, you flinch, you wait for the catch. That's what lying does. It contaminates not just one relationship, but every relationship after it. It creates emotional residue that stains everything it touches. The liar walks away thinking it's over, but the one who was lied to is left carrying the weight of broken certainty long after the words were said. Even worse than the initial lie is how some people react once it's exposed. They deflect. They minimize, they blame. It wasn't a big deal. You're blowing this out of proportion. I lied because I didn't want to hurt you. But the truth is, they didn't lie to protect your feelings. They lied because they didn't want to deal with your reaction. And instead of standing in the fire with you, they chose to set it and run. That's not love. That's not care. That's cowardice dressed up as concern. And when someone justifies their lie by making you feel guilty for being hurt by it, they're not sorry, they're manipulative, they're trying to shift the spotlight from their wrongdoing to your reaction. But your pain is valid, your anger is valid, and your decision to walk away from someone who couldn't tell you the truth, that's not weakness, that's wisdom. What many don't realize is that trust isn't broken by enemies. It's broken by those we let close. The deeper the connection, the deeper the cut. When you love someone, you let them into parts of you that no one else sees. You become vulnerable. You open your heart and your mind, and you believe, sometimes blindly. That belief is sacred. That belief is a gift. And when someone lies to you, they trample on that gift. They turn vulnerability into a weapon and leave you wondering if anything was ever real. That's why lying doesn't just break trust. It destroys it. It levels the foundation and leaves you standing in the rubble. And no matter how many times they say it won't happen again, there's always a voice inside whispering, but it could. Because once the truth has been betrayed, certainty dies with it. There's no easy path back from a lie. There's no shortcut. There's no reset button, because what was lost wasn't just the truth. It was safety. It was the sense that you were secure, seen, and respected. And when someone takes that away with one decision, they forfeit the right to demand instant forgiveness. Healing takes time. Rebuilding trust takes effort. And sometimes the most honest thing you can do is walk away, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. Because staying with someone who lies is like building a home on sand. It will always sink, no matter how pretty it looks from the outside. When someone refuses to take responsibility for their actions, it doesn't just show immaturity, it reveals their entire character. Because accountability is not optional in a relationship, friendship, or any human connection. If a person constantly blames everyone else, makes excuses for their behavior, or plays the victim every time they're called out, that's not just frustrating, it's a clear warning sign. You cannot build anything real with someone who won't own their mess. The truth is, we all make mistakes. We all fall short. But only those with real strength can look someone in the eye and say, yes, I did that. I was wrong. That simple sentence holds more power than any explanation ever could, because it shows integrity, it shows humility, and more than anything, it shows that the person values the relationship enough to admit when they've caused harm. But the ones who refuse accountability, they do something much worse than just deflecting blame. They rewrite the narrative. They manipulate the truth. They turn their mistakes into your fault, their decisions into your problem. Suddenly, you're apologizing for being upset, You're the one being questioned, not them. They become masters of the switch. They start with, I didn't mean it, shift to, why are you attacking me? And end with, you're the one who always does this. And just like that, they flip the script. You walked in thinking you were confronting a hurtful action, and now you're on defense, wondering how it became about your flaws. This is not a coincidence. It's a strategy. People who hate being held accountable will always find a way to put you on trial for feeling what they caused. And then there's the silence, the shutdown, the emotional disappearing act. When they can't spin the story in their favor, they just walk away from the conversation altogether. They ignore your messages. They go cold. They leave you hanging in the middle of a conversation that needed resolution. That silence isn't peaceful. It's punishment. It's designed to make you feel like you're too much, too emotional, too demanding. It's meant to leave you isolated with your thoughts, doubting yourself, regretting bringing it up in the first place. That's not maturity. That's avoidance. And when someone uses silence as a weapon to dodge responsibility, they're showing you who they really are. They're not trying to solve the problem. They're trying to make it disappear by exhausting you until you stop trying. You will also see them act differently in public than they do in private. In front of others, they're all smiles, full of compliments, the perfect image of warmth and reason. But behind closed doors, when it's just you and them, they're dismissive, defensive, and full of pride. This dual personality is not a glitch. It's intentional. They want the world to see them as blameless. They want your credibility destroyed if you ever try to speak out. Because the moment you say something, others won't believe you. That's how deep the denial runs. They create a public version of themselves to hide behind so they never have to answer for the private version that does all the damage. And you're left in that lonely in-between space, trying to explain what people don't see and feeling like the crazy one for even trying. What makes a lack of accountability so damaging is that it doesn't just hurt once. It keeps hurting over time. Every time you bring up a concern and they dismiss it, a piece of you starts to fade. Every time they refuse to say, I was wrong, a little more trust slips away. And eventually, you stop speaking up, not because everything's fine, but because you've been trained to expect silence, defensiveness, or blame in return. So you start bottling it up. You start pretending. You become quiet, emotionally distant, numb. That's the cost of someone else's refusal to take responsibility. You begin to carry the emotional weight of two people. And that imbalance is what eventually cracks the foundation. Not the argument, not the event, but the long, slow erosion of respect that happens every time someone refuses to look in the mirror. Real accountability isn't just about saying sorry. It's about changing the behavior that caused the pain in the first place. It's about showing through consistent action that you understand the impact of your choices. It's about asking, what do you need to feel safe again? And meaning it. Anything less is manipulation, wearing the mask of apology. And if someone says sorry just to shut you up, just to move on, just to reset the cycle, they're not taking responsibility. They're maintaining control. You deserve to be in relationships where the people around you are emotionally mature enough to admit when they've done wrong, where they don't just react with defensiveness, but respond with growth. Because without accountability, there's no trust. Without trust, there's no depth. And without depth, you're just surviving the relationship, not thriving in it. ChatGPT said, it starts off subtly. A sigh here, a complaint there. At first, you think they're just having a rough day, maybe even a tough season. So you stay patient, you stay understanding, and you offer your energy like a light in their darkness. But over time, you begin to realize that this isn't temporary. This isn't a passing moment of struggle. This is who they are. Someone who feeds off misery, who clings to pessimism like it's their identity. They find something wrong in everything. Nothing is ever good enough. Every opportunity becomes a problem. Every solution is met with resistance, and every bit of hope you offer is crushed by a wave of doubt. And slowly, their storm starts to leak into your sunshine. Their outlook begins to suffocate your motivation. Their words weigh down your spirit like a constant anchor, dragging you under. When you're around that kind of negativity day after day, it begins to erode your sense of possibility. You start off strong, full of vision and fire, but after enough conversations with someone who only sees what can go wrong, you begin to see their shadows instead of your light. You doubt yourself more. You shrink your dreams down to avoid being mocked or discouraged. You catch yourself holding back good news because you already know they'll find a way to dismiss it or bring it down. And that's the danger of consistent negativity. It doesn't just stay contained within them. It spreads. It creeps into your thinking, into your spirit, until you're not even sure if the thoughts you're having are your own or just echoes of their limitations bouncing around in your head. There's that companionship. That's corrosion. People who live in negativity don't just want to stay there. They want you to join them because misery craves company. It feeds off agreement. It thrives when others validate its weight. And the moment you try to rise, to elevate, to believe in something better, it becomes a threat to their comfort zone. So they attack your optimism. They challenge your perspective. They use sarcasm, cynicism, and cold logic to tear down your enthusiasm. They'll say, I'm just being real, or I'm just protecting you from disappointment, when really, they're just projecting their own fears onto your future. They don't want to see you win, not because they hate you, but because your victory would remind them of what they gave up on. And instead of using that as inspiration, they choose to pull you down so they don't have to rise. And if you're not careful, you'll start making excuses for them. You say, they've been through a lot, or that's just how they are. You'll start normalizing their energy, adjusting your own light to make space for their darkness. You'll start to think that maybe you're the one being unrealistic, too sensitive, or overly positive. That's what consistent exposure to negativity does. It doesn't just drain you, it rewires you. It convinces you that heaviness is normal, that pessimism is wisdom, and that dreaming big is foolish. But that's not truth, that's emotional conditioning. And just like any other kind of conditioning, if you don't disrupt it, it becomes your default. You'll carry their weight on your shoulders and call it love. But real love, real connection should lift you, not leave you depleted and doubting yourself after every conversation. Negativity isn't just an emotional state. It becomes an environment. And when you stay in that environment too long, it starts to shape your entire existence. You'll stop taking chances because you've absorbed the fear of someone else. You'll stop speaking life over your goals because you've heard too many dead-end opinions. You'll stop believing in yourself because someone else couldn't believe in anything. That's how powerful energy is. It shapes what you think is possible. And when your atmosphere is soaked in doubt, defeat, and darkness, it's nearly impossible to grow. That's why who you surround yourself with is everything. Because you can't build a future in a space where everything new is seen as a threat. You can't become your best self around people who only see the worst in everything. Eventually, you have to choose. Do you want to carry the weight of someone else's hopelessness for the rest of your life? Or do you want to breathe again, dream again, rise again? Because there comes a point when protecting your peace is more important than preserving a connection. You don't have to hate them. You don't have to judge them, but you do have to recognize when someone is pulling you under. And when they are, the bravest thing you can do is let go. Not because you're cruel, but because you love yourself enough to walk away from what's slowly killing your spirit. You weren't created to survive someone else's storm every day. You were created to rise above it, to shine through it, and to protect your light no matter how dark their world remains, ChatGPT said. You give and give and give until giving becomes expected. At first, they were grateful. At first, they noticed. They said thank you. They acknowledged your effort. They saw your presence as a blessing. But over time, the gratitude faded. The appreciation became silent. The things you once did out of love became obligations they assumed you would fulfill. And when you stopped, even for a moment, they acted like something was wrong with you. That's what happens when people begin to take you for granted. They forget that what you give is not owed, it's chosen. It's a choice you make every day to show up, to care, to sacrifice, to be present. But they begin to treat your energy like it's on demand, like your loyalty is automatic, like your time and love are endless resources. They forget that behind your consistency is a human being who still needs to feel seen, heard, valued. It doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in slowly. One missed thank you, one favor that turns into an expectation, one moment where your needs are brushed aside because theirs feel more urgent. They stop asking how you're doing. They stop checking in. They stop seeing you as a person and start treating you as a role. The friend who's always there, the partner who always forgives, the family member who always helps. And because you care, you keep showing up. You tell yourself they're just busy. You tell yourself they mean well. But deep down, a small voice starts to whisper, they don't see you anymore. And that voice only grows louder with every unreturned call, every ignored effort, every one-sided interaction that leaves you drained and wondering when the care you give will be returned. You start to feel invisible, not because they've stopped being around you, but because they've stopped noticing the weight you carry. You've become so reliable, so strong, so available that they assume you'll never break. They assume you'll always be okay. And that assumption is the betrayal because they don't even think to ask what you need. They don't pause to wonder if you're tired, if you're hurting, if you're drowning behind the smile you wear for their comfort. They love the version of you that serves their convenience, not the full version of you that still needs love and care. And that hurts more than anything because you're not asking for everything. You're not asking for miracles. You're just asking to matter, to be appreciated, to be valued, to be treated like your heart is not a machine that never runs out of fuel. The more you continue giving without being seen, the more you begin to feel alone, even in the middle of people. You laugh, but it feels forced. You listen to their problems, but your mind drifts to how no one asks about yours. You sit in conversations, pouring into everyone around you, only to realize no one is poured back into you. And it's not because you don't need it. It's because they've forgotten that you do, because you made it look too easy, because you carried it all too well. And now the moments you need someone most are the moments you feel like you can't even ask, because they've come to expect you to never need. They've convinced themselves that you're the strong one, that you're built for this, that you'll never stop giving, no matter how little you get in return. And when you finally pull back, when you finally set the boundary, when you finally say, enough, they act surprised. They say you've changed. They accuse you of being cold, distant, ungrateful. But the truth is, you didn't change. You just got tired. You just woke up to the imbalance. You realized that being taken for granted wasn't love, it was comfort. And your presence was never supposed to be a guarantee. It was a gift, a rare and valuable gift, one that they opened, used, and left on the table without care. And when you take that gift away, not out of spite, But out of self-respect, it shakes them because now they're faced with the reality of what they never cherished. And sometimes it's not until your absence that they finally see your worth. But by then, something inside you has shifted. The part of you that kept hoping, kept giving, kept bending, has grown tired of bleeding silently for people who wouldn't even offer a bandage. You no longer feel guilty for choosing yourself. You no longer feel obligated to pour into empty hands that never once reached back, because you realize that love without reciprocity is not love. It's servitude. And your heart was never meant to be someone else's endless resource. You deserve to be appreciated without asking, loved without proving, valued without being used. You deserve to be in spaces where your presence is celebrated, not just expected, where your kindness is treasured, not taken advantage of. And until that becomes your reality, you have every right to step back from anyone who mistook your giving heart for something they could endlessly consume, ChatGPT said. So from this moment forward, draw the line. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with unshakable clarity. Decide that your peace is non-negotiable. Decide that your time is precious. Decide that your love, your energy, your presence will no longer be handed out to those who treat it like it's nothing. You are not here to be someone's afterthought. You are not here to be used, dismissed, or tolerated. You are here to be valued, respected, and chosen without conditions. Let this be the moment you stop explaining your worth and start enforcing it. Because the second you demand more from your life is the second everything starts to change. Not because the world suddenly becomes easier, but because you finally stop accepting what's been breaking you all along. Enough is enough. It's time to choose yourself.